take care of today. First, I'll call the meeting in order and like a motion to approve the agenda and approve the minutes of the January 15th, 2026 funding and programming committee.
Chair, we don't need a motion for the agenda.
Perfect.
Without any changes.
Thompson moves the minutes.
There's a second.
White seconds.
Thank you, Katie. I'll ask that the roll's called for this one.
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County OJ.
Aye.
Harper County Milky. Dakota County Chapik.
Aye.
Hennepin County Buell.
Aye.
Ramsey County Leesman. Scott County Rudolph.
Aye.
Egan Mathis.
Aye.
Eden Prairie Ellis.
I'll abstain.
Frisley Kozlucher.
Aye.
Minneapolis White.
I'll be dropping halfway through, and Gustav Stewart is my alternate. He'll be voting for me after about 1:30.
Thank you for that, member. Noted. St. Paul Weber.
Aye.
Plymouth Thompson.
Aye.
Metro Transit Jenowiak.
Aye.
Urban Transit Scholl.
Aye.
DNR Spooner Walsh.
Aye.
MnDOT Bike Ped Joshi.
This is Mackenzie Turner Bargan, and I will be filling in for Molly Joshi while she's on leave.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
And
Abstain.
yes, please. Thank you.
Metro District Tag. MnDOT State Aid Brown.
Aye.
MPCA Dickerson. Council MTS Peterson. Or
It's
Henniker?
me. Cole. Aye.
Step Coordinator Kotsukos.
Aye.
Chair, the motion at 15 ayes.
Robbie, just to note, Darren Milkey chatted in his aye vote as well. So
I can call that again. Carver County Mielke.
Aye, I'm here. Sorry, a little late.
No problem. Thank you. All right, Chair, the motion at 16 ayes.
thank you. Is there any one here that would like to express a public comment? Members from the public here meeting today? Seeing none, we'll move on to the tab report.
Thank you, Chair. Load up here. Tab met on February 18th. For the chair's report, Chair Hovland reported that the tab executive committee met prior to the tab meeting. Julie Jepson was selected as the first vice chair, and Taylor Hubbard was selected as second vice chair for 2026. Peter Dugan was selected as a tab liaison to the transportation committee. They had an update on the regional solicitation public comments, and also Met Council is submitting a federal USD DOT planning grant application for build. For the MnDOT report, Connie Seagen reported that as of February 17th, there were 27 fatalities statewide, and this is compared to 37 in 2025. And then the Minnesota legislature started on February 17th. This is a bonding year, and local governments and state have $7 billion worth of requests, and approximately $1 billion would be in the bonding bill. And the Rethinking I-94 project is out for public comment through mid-March. And then also MnDOT will present at the April TAB meeting on the impact of road closings on other modes of transportation. For the MPCA, Frank Kolash reported that the Climate Change 2026 Climate Action Framework was released. Also, MPCA has grants open for food systems. And then the Federal Register EPA published their repeal of the endangerment finding for greenhouse gases from transportation sources in the United States. And this is a reversal of the 2009 decision. EPA now says that the in-house gases emitted from cars and trucks on the roads are not endangering health and welfare in the United States. And that removes all regulatory bodies that were found to have under the Clean Air Act. It also repeals the vehicle emission standards for greenhouse gases going back from 2012 to 2027 and beyond. For the Metropolitan Airports Commission report, Bridget Reef submitted a report to be read. Passenger numbers for 2025 were down 2.95%, with total of 36.1 million passengers. There was an all-time record for international destinations in 2025, and international travelers accounted for 3.6 million passengers. For the Metropolitan Council, Deb Barber reported annual ridership numbers will be coming out in March. And the legislative session has started, which means they will have a number of legislatively mandated reports that they are required to present. The reports include highest subsidy transit routes analysis, the premium on demand pilot project expansion, Metro Transit planning care standards reports, and updates on transit safety. For the Suburban Transit Association, Gary Hansen reported increasing ridership in January with all the providers. Also, MBTA received a Dakota County Communities for All award to support disability awareness training for its bus operators. The program invests in initiatives that advance equity, inclusion, and access across Dakota County communities. And MBTA also received a Scott County Statewide Health Improvement Partnership Award to promote active transportation in Scott County. The program supports local strategies that improve health outcomes, making it easier for people to incorporate active transportation into their daily lives. The award may be applied toward installation of bike lockers at a park and ride or wayfinding signage. For business items, TAB approved 2 streamlined tip amendments that went through TAC. The first was MnDOT National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Charging Station project. There was existing funding from 2025 that needed to be added as a project in 2026. And also scope and cost increase for MnDOT's Minnesota 77 bridge rehabilitation. They also approved the scope change request for the City of Minneapolis Park neighborhood. Both TAC and TAB did vote on a reduction of $752,281 of federal funding, which is a little bit more than funding and programming had reduced it by. And there were 3 information items: a national scan of integration of travel demand management for highway projects, an update on the arterial bus rapid transit plan, and there was discussion on the reading of the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement. TAB will have an action item at its April meeting, determining how often they want to read. That's the acknowledgement. And that's my report.
All right, thanks, Elaine. Very informative. Move on to business items. Our first business item is comes with Transmittal 2026-18. It's a program year extension request by the City of Anoka for its Trunk Highway 47 corridor improvement. And not sure if Joe or Robbie will be here presenting on this one.
Thanks, Chair. Assuming you can hear me well, it'll be me, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, thanks. So as many of you remember, we have updated our program year policy roughly about a year ago. And since then, we've had a couple of slam dunks that really weren't impacted by the policy. And the policy, of course, was meant to capture things that the previous policy didn't capture. And now we have new stuff that the current policy probably doesn't capture. So this one's a little bit, there's a little nuance and a little bit of interpretability. But anyway, I'll start This is a request from the city of Anoka, and they're requesting two things. One, to move a couple of projects back 2 and 3 years respectively, and two, to combine those projects. So I'll talk a bit about two different projects. First off, in 2022 solicitation, the city was awarded almost $5 million for corridor improvements to an 0.8 of a mile segment of Trunk Highway 47. On the map attached, this is the north segment of the two. And this project includes signals, turn center lane, multi-use trails, sidewalk, ADA improvements, etc. And that was programmed and remains programmed right now for 2027. In the next solicitation, 2024, the city was awarded $7 million for the segment immediately south of the previous one. And this is a grade grade separate, the BNSF railroad crossing at Trunk Highway 47. And this project is programmed for 2028. So a couple of things have happened leading to this request, and those things have happened to the second project, the 2024 grade separation. And so they're requesting that the two projects be moved, from 27 and 28 respectively to 2030. And the rationale goes with the 28 project. First off, at some point in time, and I think the city might be able to tell you a little bit more about that, the sponsorship was shifted from MnDOT to the city of Anoka. Additionally, the city was awarded $2.5 million in Federal Railroad Administration railroad crossing planning grant, but that took that was delayed in getting that grant agreement signed, I think, through the federal shutdown and other shakeups federally. So the staging and roadway closures so the preparation for that project does put that back in 2030. And given that the two projects are related and that there's going to be roadway closures and a little bit of duplication and efforts, the city's asking that both projects be moved the same year, 2030, so they can combine the two projects as well. Normally, we can combine projects without a lot of problem. In fact, without going through this process, if we can get both projects to go in the same year as the earlier year. Unfortunately, it's the later project that is causing the headache here. So, so this is a rarity in what we did not even make a recommendation because it's a little bit out of policy, and so you can make first recommendation. So you do see those three options in the staff analysis, and one would be approve the request as requested. And you'll see in a lot of the write-up that we talk about how obviously putting those two projects together has certain benefits that many of you are familiar with in terms of not disrupting things twice and having one contract and some of the economies of scale that go with that. However, a more rigid interpretation of what's happening is that the 2027 project really does not need this, and because it is its own project, it was funded as its own project, and nothing has really happened there. So if you really wanted to, you could recommend approval of the program year extension just for the south segment to 2030 and leave the north segment in 2027. And then a third option would be to deny it altogether. This is the first time since we've had the new policy, or the updated policy, I should say, where we've had somebody asking for an exception. And the exception that they're asking for is to the 1 year rule, because the old policy basically only allowed for 1 year extensions. The new policy allows for beyond a 1 year extension if there are special circumstances. And from a staff standpoint, we do feel with the 2028 project that this fits that bill. And we definitely see the benefits of combining the two projects and therefore delaying the 2027 project. But we did not. We chose not to make a recommendation. So with that, I would stand for questions. I believe we have city representation here. But with that, I'll shut up.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate the thorough review of that. Is the applicant requester here?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Ben from the city of Anoka. I am present.
Ben, do you have anything to add, or any context that you have to add? I know you have a letter in the application. Just wondering if there's more to explain or more feedback after Joe's summary.
Mr. Chair, I think Joe did a pretty well job explaining situation, as he has said. Just so the board's aware, I'm still waiting to get my grant agreement with the RCE grant. I just received an email saying hopefully in a month or two again. So it's just taking forever to get the first grant to start the planning of this combined project. But I'd stand for questions if anybody has them.
So one question that I had was, I think you had said that the project could not be delivered without an extension. I'm trying to split hairs here, but is Joe correct that the North project could be delivered within the time frame that it's currently allocated?
Mr. Chair, that would be incorrect. The south portion could be, the north portion is the one that needs to be delivered in 27. We still need this RCA grant start that preliminary design, which requires property acquisition.
Okay. I'll entertain any other questions from committee members.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question. This is Michael.
Go ahead, Michael.
Maybe a question for the applicant. Looks like one of the program years is 2028. And if that was a 1-year extension, is there any way to do both projects at the same time in 2029 instead of 2030? So moving it up a year from what's being requested.
Mr. Chair, I would have to say that'd be a very aggressive schedule at this point, and that I believe seemed to align better with 2030 funding anyways, along with the city is still actively trying to find funding to support this $90 million combined project.
Okay, so I guess that leads to a next question is, so it's not fully funded, so you're not even sure if it can be delivered in 2030 then?
Mr. Chair, the plan is for it to be delivered in 2030. There is a commitment from MnDOT of $27 million already towards the project. There's 40, off the top of my head, close to $50 million already allocated to this project. Maybe it would help to understand back when the city applied for the North project, it was in conjunction when the state was developing the South project, and it was going to be let together in 27, 28. As the state moved forward with their preliminary layout, there was a delay between the state and the city on what the project was going to be. And then, as alluded, the city in April of 2024 took the leadership of both projects with MnDOT's concurrence, and since then been actively moving forward and received this first, not these grants, but the planning grant to start the bigger, massive project, if that helps with any background.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or discussion? Elaine?
Yeah, I may clarify. I guess I didn't get it wasn't clear from the question and response that we just had. Do you not have the full funding for the project? Is that what you're saying? You're waiting on funding? Because typically we would expect when you applied for the funding, your project was going to be fully funded with the solicitation funding you received.
Mr. Chair, the North project, that is the 27 fiscal year, that one, when we applied for it, did cover the full funding of that portion of the project. It's the southern portion that we applied for just recently. That was the MnDOT's, yes, with their 7 million, but that was the larger project of the two, $80 million portion of the two, or 75 million.
Is it not possible for the north segment to still stay on schedule and not the south segment? That was,
The north segment has not began its preliminary design, waiting on the south segment.
okay.
So there's enough time for the acquisition and right away for that project to be delivered in 2027.
So maybe a follow-up, why can the north side not go if it's the section that is away from the railroad?
Mr. Chair, I would say it's because we're waiting for this grant to start that portion of the preliminary design and to get through all the design, property acquisition and all that. It would be a time crunch. And the vision would be to do the projects uniformly, like Highway 10 was done in Anoka, one project through the whole corridor.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Ben.
you.
Go ahead, Joe.
Thanks, Chair. I might need a clarification of something I might have written incorrectly, and I'm legitimately surprised to hear this. Am I hearing that the north segment is the part that was delayed by the railroad, the FRA issue? If so, I'm surprised to hear that, and I might have written that wrong, and if so, I apologize.
Mr. Chair, to clarify that the FRA planning grant is for both segments, not
Okay.
just one, the north or south. It's for the entire project. That was after the time the city took leadership of the MnDOT portion, and then we applied for the planning grant to do the entire corridor as one project.
Okay. All right. Elaine, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a note that this is definitely a unique request. We have not approved any program year extension for 3 years, so that would be a new request. Primarily when we've had applicants come in or project sponsors wanting further time out because of major delays or funding, that we would ask them just to withdraw the project and reapply for the next funding cycle, which with the next regional solicitation, that would be the funding years 2030 and 31. Just some historical.
Okay. And Elaine, in that context, or further, have we had any extensions? One of the extensions presumably would be for 2 years here.
We did have a couple exceptions with 2 years when the projects were tied. I think it was 252. If I'm getting the number correct. The projects got pulled into the 252 project, which was a corridors of commerce project, so it was beyond the control of the project sponsor, and so they received a 2-year extension. I think they actually got 1 year and then another 2-year.
Okay.
Joe might be able to answer that more because my memory is a little off right now.
Thanks, Elaine and Chair. I'm not sure I can, and I don't want to butt heads with Elaine on this topic right now, but we did have one of the ones that she's referring to. We had like 3 or 4 projects that each had a different length. Something might have had 3 years there, and to be perfectly frank, I don't remember. I'd have to dig it up, and I'm at a training now. I'm not even at the office, so we may or may not have had a 3-year one.
And
trying to make it more
Tab
confusing if I
did,
can.
yeah, with the program year, the last change of the program year policy, prior to that, it was only 1 year, and then there had been a couple extensions that exceptions that they granted. So they did allow for our public sponsors to come in and ask for exceptions. So this will definitely be an exception.
Okay. I just want to ask Ben, can you speak to whether or not the intent upon the second application was to combine these projects? I noticed that there's a lag, it's the second year of the programming year for 2022, I believe, and then the first year for 2024. And I'm just wondering if that was kind of the overall plan, was to combine these two.
Mr. Chair, I would answer that yes. The intention as a city was moving forward to not overtake, but to do this project for MnDOT during, there wasn't support by the state for the project, so we weren't able to apply for funding, and then finally we were able to that round of funding, and so we went after funds for the southern portion with MnDOT's concurrence, and then we were awarded that. And yes, the intention was to deliver one project.
Okay. And is the crunch just further, just to kind of explore a little bit further, the crunch for 2029? Is that related to, you know, well, I'm presuming it's related to the agreement, the federal agreement, but is it related to any other aspects that are specifically like changed since the time of application that push it into 2030? I guess that's what I'm asking.
The only changes is since that time, we still are waiting to get into the preliminary design with this planning grant that was expected to be obligated and be usable in 2025, and now it's 26.
Okay.
Well after it was awarded. That's been a big delay in this project, I would say, at least in the last 10 months.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Elaine?
Just add a comment. We do have with our scope change policy, we can combine two tab funded projects. So that has been done. Typically, usually it's the second project would be advanced versus the first one going later.
Right. Okay. Other discussion? Joe?
Thanks, Chair. I took a look back, and the 252 projects were, I don't know if this matters to anybody, but they were delayed 3 years from 26 to 29.
Yeah, and I believe that's consistent with what Elaine said. There was a couple of extension requests, not just a single.
Oh, Elaine had suggested that nothing was over 2 years. This one was 3 years.
It was a single
so,
request.
I mean, we might be. It was 4 projects and 1 action.
Okay.
And so
Well,
I
I
might
thought
be
there was
splitting here.
2 requests. Yeah, I think it was done twice.
It was done twice. The first time it was for 3 years. The next time, it's even messier. Well, those are different projects. It's all messy. But one was connected to the blue line. The first one wasn't. Anyway, the first time around it was 26 to 29. And again, I'm kind of splitting hairs. That might not matter, but I was just pointing out that 3 years has happened, just to clarify that point from earlier.
Okay. So in accordance with our policy, if the projects were combined, would the policy allow a combination of the projects and then 1 year assignment to 2029, or is that stretching the policy beyond its intent? And I'll just ask that of staff what their interpretation of that might be.
I would say that would
Sure.
be 2 decisions, because it's combining the project as a scope change. So they would have
Right.
to request that also. And that's usually done on staff with the project managers with MnDOT.
Chair, can you rephrase that, or I'm sorry, repeat that question? I admit I was caught messaging somebody about something.
Nope. The 2 projects, one is 2027, one is 2028. The applicant's looking to basically combine them or combine the delivery years in those. They were to combine the projects into the 2028 project and then ask for a 1-year extension. That would be, I'm asking if that would be within policy.
Chair, it would be as much within policy as what they've requested. You'd still be giving one of them a 2-year extension.
Okay.
And so, the times where we combine projects and you don't even see it through a more administrative process is if the earlier project, if they could both go in 27, then we would just combine them in 27 and move on. And then one of the later projects would get get its funding through advanced construction later on. But if it sounds to me like this hinges on the later project, and then therefore you're going to have to combine them, you'd have to give the earlier project a 2-year. And also I'd be very careful to make sure if you made a move like that to make sure that 29 was even possible. Otherwise we'll be back here in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to further the discussion? Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe this is a question for the applicant, but the 2.5 million RCE planning grant, what exactly is that accomplishing? And is that's not even to the design process yet? That's just a planning grant, and it looks like it was submitted for probably in 2024. So is that what is delaying the project? Is this FRA grant, or can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and Ben, I'm hoping you can advise us on that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that planning grant is a total of 3.12 million to get the project through preliminary design up to a layout to get through the NEPA process and through that level, and maybe even further with the city's match and making it $3 million for the combined project.
Okay, thank you.
Robert?
Mr. Chair, just a question maybe for staff. I think the reason we have this policy of not trying to continually delay projects or extend them out too far is to make sure that we're spending the money that's allocated to the region and not turning it back. I'm curious if any type of an analysis was done for our 2027, 2028 as far as what type of balance we have. Are there projects that are searching for funds? Are we overfunded? Does this create some type of a problem for the program?
Good question, and thanks for that. When we developed or were updating the policy, I kind of wanted to work some of that into the policy and let the applicants be at the risk of whether or not the program was able to very well withstand that. And that's not what the policy says. Now, that said, yes, a part of the reason these policies exist is because we want to make sure the funding is spent. We don't want to lose funding. Secondly, we want to incentivize applicants to do their projects and to do them when they say they're going to. To be perfectly frank, more often than not, if you get a 1-year extension versus a 3-year extension, that the program is impacted roughly the same, because usually if you get a 1-year extension, you're waiting a couple years in that funding. So the purpose of the 1-year extension was really to incentivize, don't let that happen, or you're going to be waiting in your money. So from the standpoint of the impact on the program, it doesn't matter that much, and I maybe regret saying that someday. And as for the question about whether or not the 27 and 28 is going to withstand this, I'm really, really happy to see Colleen Brown stand up, because she probably knows better than I do.
Colleen?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So fiscal year 27, we do have a balance, but we have a lot of AC on the books, so we have no problem spending it, so that money won't be lost. And then 2028, we're actually over programmed, and we have to balance that year to 0 now. So the movement of that project out of 28 actually helps our over programming.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions, discussion? If not, staff has presented 3 options that could be in the form of a motion. I'd entertain any of those, or if you have a fourth that you'd like to present.
This is Michael, Mr. Chair. I know these projects are very tough, and it sounds like the local agency stepped up and took over this project, and there's been a lot of moving parts. So I would hate to see funding being lost, especially when they have secured federal grant funding to move forward. So I'll see where this falls, but I'm going to make a motion to go with option 1 to recommend what the applicant is requesting for both projects in 2030 and retaining all the funds.
Colleen Brown seconds that.
Okay, thank you, Michael and Colleen. Is there any further discussion? Darren?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question for me, because I maybe wasn't totally following it, but is 2029 possible with the applicant to achieve, or is it definitely has to be 2030?
I think the applicant expressed that it would be risky, but I'll allow Ben to respond to that directly.
Mr. Chair, I mean, 2030 would be desirable. 2029 is risky, but willing, city's willing to do that. Try for it or go for it.
Just a quick follow up too, and Colleen, as far as the fund is concerned, 2029 to 2030, is there much of a difference there between those 2 years? I know you expressed 2028 balance and, being, kind of spent down.
Yes, 2029 is severely overprogrammed.
Okay.
So we can't give them money in 29. They would, if they could go in 29, but they wouldn't get their funds till 30 anyway.
Thank you for that. You did say that. Jerry.
Thanks, Chair. Maybe just a comment to support the city of Anoka. I do know on a project like this, you really need to have your preliminary layout figured out. Dealing with BNSF, and I have experience working with BNSF, that is a process, and it's not an easy task. So I would say, and I could support moving these funds to 2030 for both projects. Thanks.
Thanks. Robert?
Yeah, I support that option as well, the motion on the floor. I think that as this moves forward to TAC and TAB, maybe explaining the financial ramifications or even benefits of this action would help tell that story. And if there's any past projects that have had 3-year extensions, maybe explaining that, because there'll probably be a lot of questions as this moves through committee.
Thank you for that comment. Any other discussion? If not, there's a motion and a second on the floor. I'll ask Robbie to call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Dakota Oyate.
Aye.
Carver County Mielke.
Aye.
Dakota County Chapik.
Aye.
Edmond County Buell.
Aye.
Ramsey County Leisman. Scott County Rudolph.
Aye.
Egan Mathis.
Aye.
Eden Prairie Ellis. Eden Prairie Ellis.
Aye.
Fridley Kozlicher.
Aye.
Minneapolis White.
Hi, filling in for Katie White. Aye.
Plymouth Thompson.
Aye.
St. Paul Weber.
Aye.
Metro Transit Genowiak.
Aye.
Urban Transit Shoal.
Aye.
DNR Spooner Walsh.
Aye.
Midnight Bike Ped Turner Bargain.
Aye.
Midnight Metro District.
Car for tag, aye.
Midnight State Aid Brown.
Aye.
MPCA Dickerson. Council MTS Hinneker.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator Kutsukos.
Aye.
Chair, the motion at 19 ayes.
Thank you. Next item is Action Transmittal 2026-19 and its release of the 2026 Regional solicitation, active transportation solicitation, and highway safety improvement program solicitations. And seems like a monumental item. Steve's gonna walk us through or walk us up to where we're at today and help us in guiding that decision.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So we came 2 months ago to this group to release it for public comment. Now we're back and going to discuss some of those public comments. And if you'd like to make any recommend any changes based on the 22 comments that came in the door. You'll see on this page there's a few different attachments. One is the action transmittal. Then we've got a presentation, which we did update as of yesterday here, just so people make sure they've got the fresh version. The public comment report, number 2 on the list, and then finally the applications, and that's as they were sent out for public comment here. So you'll see in the motion there is 3 recommended changes here at the staff level, and then if you'd like to consider those and add additional ones too, that could be part of the motion, but we'll walk through that today. So Robbie, if you wouldn't mind going to the PowerPoint. Thank you. And second slide there. Here's some of the stats on the public comment period. 22 comments, some are on the order of 50 some. Kind of individual comments within there that we parsed apart based on subject area. We also did that budget survey, so we've done that the last 2 cycles. You know, if you had $250 million, where would you put it? Type of deal. And did get 160 of those back, probably more relevant for the funding options that we bring next fall back to the group. The number was a little bit down. You know, obviously the last few months have been difficult to do public engagement, but we did do targeted events in all 7 counties with that budget survey tool. So that was, I think, a nice approach. But again, you probably would expect maybe another, three times as many as those based on the past year. But we'll do it again in the summer, going into the funding options. Okay, next slide. So first we have a couple related to active transportation. And we did have a meeting on Monday of the active transportation work group, and a few of you on this call here on the committee were in attendance there. So staff was recommending 2 changes, and we did talk to the active transportation work group about these and others. And this is shown in the action transmittal, shown in red. So we did have 1 comment on the complete street scoring, and how it applies to entities without roadway authority. So how can you say you've got a complete streets policy if you're not the owner? So we're adding proposing to add some language that, as you can see in red, agencies or organizations without roadway ownership or jurisdiction may include the community's local ordinance or policy where the project is located and describe how the project would support advancing complete streets in the community. So complete streets, that's one of the 7 requirements in the state legislation. And so I think that's a reasonable change, that request. The second one here, comments on the scoring measure. So this came up at tab and then also in a public comment about should the distance, particularly for bike projects and destinations that you can reach, be further than the half-mile buffer that's currently in the application. A lot of the backstory to that, but one of the reasons we're using the half miles because that's the methodology for greenhouse gas tracking that we're using. But we're suggesting that applicants may identify additional destinations up to 1 mile from the project location, but you would need to demonstrate that the destinations have a continuous bicycle facility that provides safe access to the project location. So just because you're within that mile buffer doesn't mean that a person could theoretically bike there safely, or there is that bike connection. And so it could be within the mile, but again, there's some caveats there. These destinations must be clearly marked outside the half-mile buffer, and that's because the half-mile and in is what we're using for greenhouse gas evaluation. So those are two recommended changes. Now, next slide here. We did have a few others related to active transportation. Some of it was about limiting financial barriers, and we are recommending, since there will likely be a 2027 active transportation solicitation, that some of this gets evaluated after this cycle, and then changes for the what might be the 2027 cycle. Also was a comment about raising the maximum award from 200,000 to 250,000. We talked about that at the work group on Monday. Didn't seem to be consensus among the policymakers there that we needed to do that now, but could reconsider after this cycle. That's for the AT planning grants again. And then here's some other comments on the right side. One of them in highlighted we want to spend a little time on. We received a couple comments and quite a bit of discussion at the active transportation work group on now that TAB limited or said there's no local match required for the active transportation projects. And so that was a change from what F&P and TAC recommended. So that got flipped at the TAB level when it went out for public comment, no local match. We did hear in the public comments that should we do something to limit the number of applications so one or two agencies don't flood us with applications, and that's tough both on I think as far as trying to focus the money for small agencies was one of the comments in there, but then at the active transportation work group is also based a little bit on the scores. Like we have volunteer scores from across the region, so if we get, whatever, 50, 100 applications for active transportation, what does that do to the volunteer scores and their ability to get through those in a timely fashion? So, and I will say that was reiterated by Carver County. We did get a late comment letter here after the public comment report was put together from Carver County. I know, Darren, I think you're on the line here too. Didn't include it in the report since that was already out. But welcome you to kind of speak to any of those topics here today. So next slide. So the active transportation work group did ask for some technical input on whether limiting the number of AT, this is for active transportation only, active transportation applications that an agency could submit for the 3 active transportation categories. So an example might be each agency can only submit 3 applications or 4 or 5. I'm not trying to put it out there, but 5 applications for the local bike, 5 applications for local ped, and 5 applications for AT planning would be one example. Not in the motion. So if people want to do that, they would need to add that to the motion. We can also look at it after the cycle, see what happens, and make a change later. But we did, to try and maybe juice the conversation a little bit here a little bit, we did want to lay out some pros and cons to doing so. And you may as a group say, hey, there's no consensus on this, but we do want to pass on some technical feedback to the policymakers and to aid in their decision making. And we've done that in the past before too. And so we drafted up some pros to limiting the submittals, and maybe to just quickly go through those. Give smaller cities a better opportunity to be funded. Higher number of applications might be taxing for the volunteer scores and or delay the overall process. It does force agencies to prioritize and limit their submittals, and that's something we're familiar with a lot of the US DOT discretionary grants. It may help with geographic balance of how the funds are spread throughout the region, may not. We will have another solicitation in 2027, so there is a near-term opportunity if you say you put 3 or 5 in, and you could see how they were scored, and then put them in the next year again, or a different mix of them. Some of the cons to limiting the submittals, we want to make sure we have enough submittals to, we got 50 million, so we got quite a bit of money for active transportation. We think, I think Joe Whiting, you had kind of thought that may maybe be somewhere on the order of maybe 20 to 30 projects might get funded for active transportation. And so you don't want to have a list that's too short or that you get to a what people view as a lower scoring project where there's a big funding big gap in score from maybe the top tier projects and fund something on the bottom. Agencies may want to submit more applications, especially this cycle, since there's new measures and people don't know exactly how their applications will turn out from a scoring perspective. So that's, I think, of a con to that. And then some larger agencies represent large geographic areas or large populations. And so they may have needs, many bike ped needs, and they're maybe not all concentrated. They may be across a city or a county. Wide geographic area, so limiting that when you represent a large area may not be prudent. So there's a few things, and we'll maybe come back to this at the end. Joel, anything I missed there, Whiting? I see you raising your hand.
No, I just wanted to add a little more detail. So I did actually bring we brought the same question to the bicycle and planning work group. I think that's pedestrian work group yesterday, and we heard some pretty strong, I'd say, opinions that there probably should be some sort of limitation, just considering of getting that geographic spread around and to make sure certain agencies maybe aren't submitting 10, 20, 30 applications. And I also brought it to the trail agency working group today as well with our regional park regional trail implementators, and they also agree that there's potentially, they're in favor of that as well. And they did spit out a couple of numbers. 3 or 4 applications potentially could be numbers that we would rest on for this limitation. But just something to definitely be thinking about too is and I would say too, if to that con of may not meet the 50 million, right? If we're doing a 27 solicitation, to say we somehow didn't get 50 million awards, I mean, we could definitely roll that over the 27 solicitation as well. So it's a con potentially for this time, but I think it's a pretty a con we could easily mitigate pretty easily with a 27 solicitation. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that context there, Joe. Good to get some of the feedback from the bike ped committees. Okay, next slide, please. Maybe I should ask Mr. Chair, do you want to discuss this a little bit now, or do you want to get through the PowerPoint? Come back to this.
I don't mind discussing it now. Joe kind of jumped in, so
that's what I thought. Yeah.
I don't know if there's any comments. I guess one I don't know if it's a question or I guess I'm seeking a little guidance here on, you have kind of a, maybe a sample addition to the motion or amendment to the motion there, and there's a letter X there, and I'm not really sure, that I feel, really comfortable in setting what X might be, or, recommending an X at this point, but maybe you could give some context to that. Like, I think, there was even some numbers thrown around about or discussed about how many applications could be processed, and some historic application information. So maybe you can provide that.
Yeah, and Joe Whiting's looked into this too. So the difficult portion, I'd say, is that what used to be pedestrian and safe routes to school, those applications are now getting pushed to active transportation. And some amount of the 40 or so applications in multi-use trail will now move to local bikeway, and some will stay with the regional bikeway. And so, you got a few things happening here, but particularly with, let's say, a combination of pedestrian and safe routes to school, there were a few applicants that submitted, I would say, more than 3 applications there. A multi-use trail, it's tough to tell because it will have a split there, but there were, one agency that submitted last time 10. Some of those will stay with probably regional bikeway, and some of them will go to local bikeway. Joe, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I agree. And I think another consideration too is, the federal awards before were higher dollars. I believe the minimum award was $1 million, I think, for the last time, up to 5.5 for the bike category. The minimum award for these category will be much lower, right? We'll be going down to 150. So potentially those very small kind of local focus sidewalk projects, for instance, right? So I think that could be another way you could see an inflated number of applications, right? Because it could be smaller awards. So that's another thing to consider. And to that point too, to you're saying, Steve, I know looking back in the last couple of solicitations, we had 4 or 5 per solicitation that had submitted 5 or more applications. So not a significant amount, but you know, we also don't have the local match requirement here, so that can change, you know, applicants thinking too about applying for projects, right? If there's no local match they need to source, that could potentially be, they're more likely to apply for a project too. So I think, you know, with all those things considered, I think this is something that we should be considering to just ensure that, you know, we are equitable in kind of what we're funding here. And I'll note too, the one agency that had applied a lot in that regional bike category also has come in support of limiting applications as well. So if that's something that's, yeah, Three Rivers. So that's you know, something to think about too. So they have actually said, yeah, we agree there probably should be some sort of limit. So yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I think another con in limiting submittals is you might not get the best projects or being most efficient with the money that we're given. You know, all of this money generates from the Metro sales and use tax, right, for transit, and then Met Council gets a small portion of that. Well, I know the legislature, as Charles Carlson probably attest to, I mean, they're taking a close look at operational costs for transit, and I'm a little leery about limiting applications if the goal is to find the best projects. I think that would be the first step. And if the policymakers want to look at geographic equity after the fact, I think that's fine. But I think there is a risk in limiting the number of projects and just using some arbitrary number. There may be some unintended consequences. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah, I think great comment, Michael. And I think that was one of the reasons why they wanted to, consider, in addition to, kind of lowering the barrier to smaller entities, was to lower the match, right? I mean, so that they did have, a lot of interest in this. So, go ahead, Darren, I think was next.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say a lot of what Michael just said, and maybe it's decided later if you maybe have a cutoff of agency gets so many projects funded, and then you start going down the list and skipping over them and fund other projects or agencies to get more of a geographic balance. And then if you have enough funding, still come back to them and start going back down the list again, or some flavor of that. But I think TAB could look at something like that too.
Good comment. Thanks, Cole.
Yeah, along those same lines, we can advise TAB against the idea that the number of applications indicates demand, but the legislature might also get that message of if we only have 70 applications because of the number that we limited, and they're like, well, that only uses we fund 3/4 of the projects. Is this really a good use of the money? So I think that's another consideration. Not just are we funding projects that maybe aren't the highest priority, but are we indicating that there's not as much demand as there truly is for this program?
Yeah, I like that we're saying only 70 at this point, so that's great. Other comments on this particular consideration or discussion? All right, go ahead, Steve. You can proceed. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not hearing maybe a consensus on this one so far from what I'm gathering. That maybe I'll just pass on some comments to TAC, but we'll see if people have some time to noodle on it a little bit. So next slide. Now the next few slides relate to more of the regional solicitation. So there were several comments on travel demand management and the maximum award there, and shared mobility and unique projects was another thing we got rid of. And some of the shared mobility projects maybe don't have a great landing place, at least with sufficient funding as far as some of the responses were concerned. I do think it's tough to kind of create like a new category right now. You could raise the maximum. We didn't in our response said let's take a look at it after this cycle, including whether we need something for shared mobility in the future or bringing back unique projects. That's probably too big of a thing without delaying the solicitation for several months. But we do know that this is a topic that several people did comment on that needs to be on our radar. For sure for next cycle. Okay, next slide. Robbie. Okay, several comments on community considerations. I think it's maybe 5 or so on support and 2 or 3 that weren't supportive of either the points or the percentages or some part of the measure. We do commit to kind of a full reevaluation of all the measures after the 2026 solicitation. The percentage was talked about by TAB and wasn't split vote, but they did vote to keep it at 15% for the safety categories and 20% for all other categories. And so I don't think this probably changes it based on the public comment period, but do want to do a full evaluation again after the fact to see if it made any difference or if it should be changed. Next slide. Okay, a few comments on data considerations. One was on the crash data used in the safety applications and the HSIP application. So one comment said we should, the 2025 crash data is now out. So we did confirm with MnDOT that 2021 to 2025 5-year crash data was appropriate to be used. And it was actually nice to get rid of the 2020 data because that was the start of COVID. So there was some wonky things happening there too. So we're proposing that this be a change from the staff level in the solicitation for both the regional solicitation safety applications and the HSIP applications that we update those crash years. Small thing, but that's worth mentioning here. Several comments about data availability, mapping, etc. And we are working on a data viewer to accompany the applications, and where you'll have a bunch of different layers for RBTN and all these different items that you can toggle on and off to help you complete your application. So we're in the works. And then we did have a comment about simplifying the project information form. And good comment there. I think it's would have to wait till 2028 cycle or risk probably delaying the solicitation by several weeks for sure. So we're recommending we wait till the next cycle to make some of those changes. Next slide. So we did have a few comments on the transit side about having earlier year money. So again, most of the federal funds are in 2030 and 2031. There's no, with the exception of what we're setting aside for travel demand management, the TMOs, EV charging, and the TBI, travel behavior inventory. There's another funding for like a regional bike project or a transit project. But a lot of times the transit providers want money that's not 4 to 5 years out. So that is an issue. We don't have money now that's earlier for transit projects. And if we didn't want to do that, we would need to set aside money this cycle for next cycle so it could be closer. One comment on the bridge sub-target. So in the past, that was a target or a minimum at various times of $10 million per cycle. The history on that was roughly 15 years ago when MAP 21 was signed, they got rid of a few of the federal programs. 2 of those were Safe Routes to School and Bridge Improvement and Replacement, BIR. So that $10 million came from what was a federal program and the amount in Bridge Improvement and Replacement. But now 15 years out from that program ending, it seemed like a legacy type dollar amount. So we didn't recommend a sub-target as part of the overall solicitation evaluation process, but could reevaluate that after this cycle. And then I did have a comment on a couple comments on the HSIP and looking at that closer, and some support for the pilot program on rumble strips. And we are committed to looking closer at the whole HSIP program after the cycle when we have some more time. Okay, next slide. So here's the recommended motion, is shown also in the action transmittal. And it does, and this couples everything together. So regional solicitation, active transportation, highway safety improvement program, and recommends releasing all of those with the 3 changes we talked about. 2 of those, or one was the one with the crash data. That's the first bullet point. Complete streets was number 2 that we had talked about, and number 3 was that allowing for bike projects that buffer from ½ mile to 1 mile, and some of the caveats there. So those are the 3 things that were, I think, kind of easy changes from the staff perspective. If there's others from what you've heard or looked through the public comment report that you'd like to discuss, that's certainly your prerogative to change what's shown here in the motion and add other things or changes. So a few other slides just to round out the presentation, then we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, for questions from the committee. So next slide. Did want to just mention the next steps. So the applications go all the way through the Met Council, and they're the final approval body for the applications. And so that will be April. We do have some community considerations trainings planned. I think Amy Venowitz here perhaps was going to put a flyer in the chat here for folks announcing some of the details there. But a few other things to talk about. We are moving from what used to be the web grants software program for how you inputted your applications to what's called Flux. And so we will have some training on how to navigate that software and how to input the applications. Actually, the scoring will be done through that too. So the scores will have a different process to look at the applications and score them. So training that this spring. Probably going to form the scoring committees in May and June. Email already came out from Amy on the community consideration scores and trying to recruit them. Anticipate the call for projects to be out late spring. Probably due sometime in June. Again, we're building this Flux software at the same time, so that's what we want to make sure we've tested that and feel good about that before we release the applications. And then, scoring committees will be summer, fall time frame, and then project selection kind of late 2026 or late 2027. But Amy, did you want to build on some of the community considerations stuff? Mid sneeze.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to add, so because we are on kind of a short timeline, the call for scores only went out to participants that had been on the interest group, but we're going to need additional agency scores because not everyone on that group is able to participate. We're looking for about 10, probably 10, but I'm trying to line up 15 in case anybody drops out, agency scorers. And one of the requirements of scoring the community considerations is that you participate in the workshop that we are holding. And we have scheduled that for March 30th. That's a Monday. It's a half-day workshop, but it runs from 9:30 to 2:30, so it pretty much takes up your whole day. So I'm asking Abe Olson if he can put that, we have a flyer for that workshop. In addition to scorers, the workshop is open to any agency individual that just wants to attend and learn more about community considerations. We're going to be talking about best practices, both from the community perspective and from the agency perspective. So while scorers have to attend that workshop, we do want agency attendees in addition to the scorers. And we have about 15 community-based organization staff that will also be in attendance at that workshop, and they're also going to be scoring the applications. So if you're interested in scoring, let me know. If you're interested in the workshop, there's a link in the flyer that you can register under that link too.
Okay, thank you. Some good information. So it'll be a busy spring and summer and fall for us on the solicitation with all, both from the scoring perspective and submitting the applications. So let's maybe move back to that motion, Robbie, back, a couple slides back. And do want to again thank everyone for, a lot of agencies did submit comments in the 22 or 23 comments we received. So a lot of really good, insightful comments in there. So I do appreciate people taking the time to do that. So Mr. Chair, turn it back to you now. See if there's any questions or comments. People may want to go through some of these other items too and have discussions on some of the other things they've heard today.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Appreciate the staff's effort in trying to achieve a balance of being responsive to the comments and yet keeping this on moving ahead. So I understand that there's some things that will need to be evaluated on the next cycle, and you identified those in order to respond to all the comments. It's unfortunate that we don't have that time to continue on, but yeah, so good work. I don't know if there are comments, suggestions, if there's a recommended motion. I believe that motion that you have up is consistent with the bullet points that you had at the end of the staff memo with the staff analysis. I think they're just consolidated somewhat.
Yeah. This is a copy of, at the front of the action transmittal, Mr. Chair, is these 3 bullet points. So we just copied that verbatim and pasted it here. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Any discussion on this item? Darren.
Thank you, Chair. Could you scroll towards the very beginning? There was a slide with like the planning grant. There's some other stuff too. I have a question on the planning grants in particular. So if, just an example, if a county would apply and say 1 or 2 local cities within that same county would apply and get funded, could those agencies join forces and make it a joint project with that combined funding?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Joe Whiting, are you still on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
What do you think?
Well, so I'd say the planning category does have eligibility requirements that may make that not, so you either need to not have a plan in place or have a plan older than 10 years. So I believe a lot of counties probably have plans that are less old than 10 years. There could be joint applications, but they would still be limited to that maximum award amount. But generally the thinking from the policymakers is we're really looking to focus these on specific communities that do not yet have plans in place, or to be allowing during their comprehensive planning work to have some sort of supplement to their planning money to do a more full scale kind of fleshed out pedestrian and bicycle element of those comprehensive plans. So I suppose you could partner, but it would need to be with communities who specifically are lacking plans.
Yeah, I'm just saying if that would be the case, like I'm not sure if Carver County technically would have a plan that would fit that other than our comp plan, which is just looks broadly. And I know there's like a local city or 2 that wouldn't either. So if we would independently apply, that's why I'm wondering if like Carver County and the city of Waconia each got their own independent $100,000 grant, for example, could they join forces and pool that funding together? Maybe I should say 200 for Carver County, and Waconia got 100,000, so it'd be 300K total. Could we do a plan that would cover Carver County and that city Waconia example?
So I guess it'd be almost like a 2-tiered plan where it'd be a countywide plan and also a city within the county. I guess I'm not really understanding how that would work logistically.
Yeah, there's overlap, obviously, with our county system and the local cities. So instead of duplicating some efforts, it would be probably helpful if we would join forces in some regards. So we'd have a county specific plan at the very end, and the city would have their own, but we could have the same consultant, and basically like the cities would be one component of the plan, and the Carver counties would be another output of it too. But they would be integrated to some extent, so they're obviously working together.
Actually, so when you describe it like that, so that is something I think, yeah. So if you wanted to say both get an award for doing your own plan, but they want to pool that to like, contract with one consultant to do both of them, I do think that would be okay.
Okay. Thank you, Joe, on that one. I guess on the right side of this, though, more for Steve, it looks like you had some questions here, or comments that were almost like questions. I was wondering if you're looking for feedback from the group on the right hand side.
Yeah, you're talking about like the second through fourth bullet points there.
Correct, like the year-round maintenance topic, for example.
Certainly we could. The AT work group didn't. We didn't hear a push to make a change on those, but did want to acknowledge that those were comments that we received. I think I include from Carver County. So did you have anything you wanted to add, I guess, in particular?
Well, I'll say it was in our comment letter. I'll apologize. We had miscommunication and we thought it went out and it didn't. So, but it was actually Washington County's idea of just giving someone more points if they can do year-round winter maintenance, and those that can't, I guess we think that was a great idea. To not limit like a complete streets context type solution to a community, even if they can't do winter maintenance, for example. So I guess we'd be supportive of a tactic like that in particular. So just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, Mr. Chair. So we did hear that from a few folks. I think if we made that change now, TAB would have to decide if they're okay with maybe with a delay in the solicitation going out. If they would say no, but let's reassess it next cycle, I think that could be another chance too, especially if we're going to have a 2027 cycle. But if TAB says, this is a great idea, we want to make this change now, I think we would say, okay, the impact is going to be a delay of whatever number of weeks to the solicitation. Do you want to do that? Yes or no? And then it's up to them. I mean, ultimately, in the council, if that's a big enough chain deal for them to delay the cycle.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thanks, Aaron. Emily.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Steve, for the opportunity to submit comments. I did just want to reiterate kind of officially on the record one comment that Hennepin County submitted around reestablishing the bridge investment target. We've kind of said before, bridges are unique in that if the condition really does get bad enough, we'll have to load post or close off access. So just wanted to kind of reiterate our support to see a target to really recognize the criticality of this type of infrastructure here. But I appreciate, the opportunity to submit the comment and the response as well.
Thanks, Emily. Other discussion? All right. Seeing none, I guess I would entertain a motion. Cole, go ahead.
I was going to potentially make a motion, Chair, but I was just going to state, I think the conversation about limiting the AT applications was great. I would like to see that summarized at TAC. And I think regardless of what TAC and TAB decide to do, we had a number of agencies submit, we had at least one agency submit that they weren't intending to apply for the funds because they have their own local AT funds. And I think just the more we can document why maybe the application numbers are lower than you might typically see in our process on public record, that the more it helps us with the legislature. So kind of even if this board and TAB wants to say like, we didn't set a maximum, but we also know that there's a few agencies that aren't going to apply and that we want to reassess that for next cycle to see if there's something we should do to encourage more applications, you know, kind of get it on the official record in some capacity. But with that, I was just going to move the recommended motion. I didn't hear any additional changes based on the discussion today.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Turner Bargan, second.
Thank you. Is there more discussion? Do we want to comment on what Cole said or further questions on the motion? All right, seeing none, Robbie, I'll ask you to call roll.
Chair. Dakota County Oyate.
Aye.
Carver County Mielke.
Aye.
Dakota County Chapik.
Aye.
Hennepin County Buell.
Aye.
Ramsey County Leesman.
Aye.
Scott County Rudolph.
Aye.
Washington County, not here. Egan Mathis.
Aye.
Eden Prairie Ellis.
Aye.
Ridley Kozlucher.
Aye.
Minneapolis Stewart.
Katie's back. Aye.
I took a chance that time. Plymouth Thompson.
Aye.
St. Paul Weber.
Aye.
Metro Transit Genowiak.
Aye.
Suburban Transit Shoal.
Aye.
DNR Spooner Walsh. Minda Bike Peg Turner Bargain.
Sorry.
Go ahead. DNR Spooner Walsh.
Yeah, sorry. Aye.
There we go. Minda Bike Peg Turner Bargain.
Aye.
Minda Metro District Carr.
Aye.
Minda State Aid Brown.
Aye.
MPCA Dickerson. Nicholson MCS Hideker.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator Kotsukos.
Aye.
The motion had 20 ayes.
Great. Thank you. I would just comment, Steve, just one last thing. I didn't want to belabor this, but I know you got a timetable in there. Is there kind of an anticipated range of dates? I think it's kind of alluded to for applications to be received. Is that May, June period or June, July period?
Yeah, I think the earliest that we'd open the call for projects would be right at the end of April. If not, it would be the first part of May.
Okay.
And then it would extend, roughly 6 weeks or so so that'd be, into June.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you very much. All right, with that, that concludes the business agenda for today. Just wondering if there's any additional information items or other business.
Yes, Chair.
Go ahead. Elaine.
Yes, I just wanted to let you know I've scheduled an orientation meeting for new TAB members and alternates that have been appointed so far. And that's on March 6th from 1:30 to 3 p.m. So if there's anyone in this committee that would like to get an invite to that meeting, just let me know or let Robbie know and he can forward that on to me. And we will have additional ones because we still are waiting a few more appointments for TAB members. So if you can't make this one, we'll be scheduling probably another one later in March or in April.
Great, thank you. The other items, informational? Any other business, Robbie?
No, Chair, that was just calling it out for Elaine.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for attending and for the thoughtful comments and action today. So I'll call the meeting adjourned.
Oh,